The desert that summer was harsher than anyone could remember. Wind rolled across the plains like a living thing, dragging dust into the sky and stripping the color from everything it touched. Even the mesquite trees looked like skeletons of what they once were, their branches thin and brittle. For the Apache band moving across that land, each hour felt heavier than the one before. Their water bags had run dry the night before. Their horses staggered from exhaustion, and every face in the group carried the same quiet fear. How much longer could they continue? Chief Hosa rode at the front, shoulders squared, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a stone. Every decision he made affected every person behind him, and the desert didn't forgive mistakes. Miles away, the cowboy had spent his morning tracking a Mustang herd that had scattered during a storm. He wasn't looking for trouble or company or even purpose. He simply followed hoofprints because it was what he knew. But when he reached a ridge overlooking the valley, he paused. Far below, he spotted the Apache group moving slowly. Too slowly, as if each step cost them more strength than they could spare. He recognized the signs of people in deep trouble. He'd been thirsty enough times to know what desperation looked like, and something in him refused to ride away. Trust didn't come easy on the frontier, and riding toward an Apache band wasn't the kind of thing a man did lightly. But the cowboy turned his horse west anyway, scanning the land with the sharp instincts of someone who had lived half his life under open sky. He noticed the shape of the canyon walls, the color of the dirt, the strange coolness of the wind slipping between the rocks. These were signs a hidden spring might be nearby. He followed the clues until he reached a narrow crack in the stone. When he knelt and pushed his fingers into the sand, he felt moisture. He dug with both hands until water began to rise, slow but steady, pooling into a clear patch of life in the middle of nowhere. The Apaches found him just before sunset. Warriors surrounded him at once, cautious but not hostile. The cowboy stepped aside without a word and pointed to the water. The chief knelt first, touching the surface, letting the coolness run across his scarred hand. Relief moved through the group like a quiet wave. Children drank. Women filled bags. Men washed dust from their faces. And the cowboy, standing off to the side, thought it was enough. But as Chief Hosa approached him with a solemn expression, the cowboy realized the moment was far from over. The air around the canyon felt strangely charged the next morning, as if the land itself understood that something important was about to happen. The cowboy stood near the spring he had uncovered, brushing dust from his hat, while the Apache band gathered in a wide circle. Children sat with their parents. Warriors watched with calm alertness, and in the center stood 22 adult women, each from a different family within the tribe. Their expressions were steady, serious, but not unkind. The cowboy had no idea what any of this meant, and he shifted uncomfortably as Chief Hosa raised a carved staff, signaling silence. The chief's voice carried through the canyon with the weight of tradition. He spoke about the rescue, about the stranger who had appeared when all hope seemed lost, and about how gratitude alone was not enough to guide what came next. The cowboy expected some kind of thanks, or maybe a ceremonial gesture. But instead the chief turned toward the line of women and announced that they would judge the cowboy's heart. The cowboy blinked, confused. He had never heard of anything like this, and for a moment he wondered if he had stumbled into a situation far beyond his understanding. The first woman stepped forward, a loner known among her people as a healer. Her gaze was sharp and thoughtful as she asked him what value he placed on a life that was not tied to his own people. The cowboy thought carefully before answering. He explained that the desert didn't choose sides, that danger came for everyone equally, and that helping someone in need shouldn't depend on who they were. His answer earned a few nods from the crowd. Another woman approached, Nita, a craftswoman skilled with beadwork and leather. She asked whether he would stand with the Apache to people if someone unjustly threatened them, even if those causing the threat were his own kind. The cowboy hesitated only long enough to be honest. He said he would stand with whoever was right, no matter where they came from. His answer was simple, but its sincerity made an impression. One by one, the women questioned him. They asked about loyalty, fairness, mercy, courage, humility, qualities that mattered far more to them than strength or fame. The cowboy answered each question without trying to impress anyone, speaking plainly from his own experience on the frontier. By the time the last woman stepped back into line, hours had passed and the sun had shifted across the sky. Chief Hosa approached him again, studying him with a calm, assessing gaze. The cowboy felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he waited, unsure of what was coming next. He had thought the test was over. But the chief's expression told him this was only the beginning, and the next part might change his life in ways he never expected. Evening settled slowly over the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of copper and violet as the Apache camp prepared for nightfall. Smoke drifted gently from cooking fires. The soft sound of children laughing mixed with the rhythmic clatter of warriors repairing their gear. And for the first time in days, the people looked rested instead of strained. The cowboy watched all of this from a short distance, still unsure why he was being treated with so much attention. He had expected gratitude, nothing more, but everything since sunrise, especially the chief's test, had made him realize the Apaches saw his actions as something deeper. Chief Hosa motioned for the cowboy to walk with him away from the camp. They climbed a short ridge overlooking the canyon, where the air was cooler and the silence felt almost sacred. The chief stood with his hands clasped behind his back, taking in the wide desert as if he were reading a story written in the sand. Finally, he turned to the cowboy and spoke in a voice filled with calm certainty. He told him that he had passed the test without even knowing it was a test. The cowboy didn't know how to respond to that. He simply nodded, feeling more confused than proud. The chief began to explain that the Apache band had been facing difficult months, raids from rival groups, sickness that spread too quickly, a drought that stole half their resources. They had lost warriors, leaders, and people they loved. They needed someone who could move between the worlds of settlers and tribes, someone guided by principle rather than prejudice. The cowboy felt something tighten in his chest as he realized where this conversation might be heading, but he didn't interrupt. He just listened when the chief finally told him the truth, that all 22 families had agreed to welcome him as a brother to their band. The cowboy's breath caught. He had expected an offer of trade, a gift, or even just ceremonial friendship. But the chief offered him belonging, a place in the heart of their people, a role built on trust rather than blood. Not as a leader, not as a husband, not as someone owed anything, but as a bridge and protector, someone whose deeds had earned a spot in their story. The cowboy's first instinct was disbelief. A life on the frontier had taught him to keep his distance, to rely on himself alone. But as he looked down at the camp, the revived energy, the families sharing food, the women who had questioned him with such strength, he felt a quiet shift inside him. Riding alone had kept him safe, but it had never made him feel connected. This moment, unexpected and overwhelming, carried a different kind of meaning. He asked what would happen if he refused, and Chief Hosa answered without hesitation that the cowboy would still ride away as a friend, carrying their gratitude with him. There was no pressure, only respect. That honesty touched him more deeply than any reward could.